This is Canada Reads American Style, featuring two friends who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our host Rebecca from Michigan and Tara from Ontario. Hi everyone, it is Rebecca and Tara, and we are here today to do book chat number 13. Lucky 13.
Hello, Rebecca. It seems like it's been so long since we've done one of our book chats.
I agree. It does.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's been over a month since I'm pretty sure it's been over a month since we recorded one.
Yeah, because I know we try to do it monthly, but last month we had some interviews and other stuff going on that it just didn't work out. But that's great because we're bringing extra books as a result.
Yes, that's a really good point. But before we talk about what we've read, how about what are you currently reading?
Okay, so I have two books on the go. I have a nonfiction and a fiction book. My nonfiction book, which I think you're going to want to read, this is the year of nonfiction for me, but I'm going to hold that off for our year-end chat kind of thing, that thought. Let's put a pin in that. Okay, but my current nonfiction is I Take My Coffee Black, Reflections on Tupac, Musical Theater, Faith, and Being Black in America by Tyler Merritt. Are you familiar with this book?
No, but where in the world did you find this book? That's fascinating.
No idea. I keep I keep a list of books as I hear about them, but I do not, unlike you, I do not keep track of where I got the recommendation. So I'm not sure where I found it, but it is a fantastic book. So it was written, I think it was published about 2 years ago, and Tyler Merritt is an American actor, musician, I think goes on and on. He's quite multi-talented. A couple of years ago, he wrote, I think this book came about, he did a video on being Black essentially in America, and Jimmy Kimmel saw it and shared it, and it went viral, his video, and it eventually led to this book. And it is a memoir of him from the time of his childhood until present day. Through high school, he was raised in Nevada, which I find fascinating because I didn't think anyone actually lived in Vegas. I should say not Nevada, but in Las Vegas. I didn't think anyone actually lived in Vegas. I thought people just visited Vegas. So I find that really interesting in itself. And so it's with his journey through high school, musical theater, being a member of a Christian rock band. Interspersed throughout this, wherever he finds himself in life, he then throws in nuggets of American history.
Ooh.
And these are now, in Canada, when I grew up, you grew up learning American history because we had American TV. So oftentimes I knew more American history than I did Canadian history. However, he's sharing American history that I don't think is always shared, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's even within the first 20 pages, I went to my husband. I'm like, Mike, you're not going to believe this. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And then 5 pages later, I'll come back and be like, and this. And he's like, how much of that book have you read? And I'm like, 17 pages. Anyways, it's
Wow.
it's really, really good. I love his life story. I love his attitude towards life. But the way he's sharing these little nuggets of history and race in America, it's really readable and entertaining and educational. It's a great book.
Now, is this a book that you got from your library or did you purchase this book?
Library.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my fiction book is a Christmas book that I mentioned on our Christmas episode, and that's The Holiday Match by Tori Samuels. It's a romance. It's a sweet little romance.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay, so I you know me, I try to just read one book at a time, right? So
Yep.
I haven't fully committed, but I have two books that I've sort of kind of started. And the first one is a book that I got from the publisher. I am reading the very famous Canadian classic, In Search of April Raintree. It's the 40th anniversary edition. And I'm not sure how to pronounce the author's name. It's Beatrice Mosionier. I'm not really sure, so I apologize for butchering that. But basically, it's about two girls who are sisters, and they're taken from their home and family, and they're put into a foster care situation. And I don't know the full story behind it, but I know that it's a great classic, although I think you have not read it,
I have
correct?
not. No, I
Yeah.
hadn't even heard of it actually until you mentioned it.
So apparently, and it's so interesting because the foreword was written by Katharina Vermette,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who wrote the little blurbs in the front of the book, it's Sherry, is it Sherry Dimeline? Am I
Yep.
saying that right? Yeah. David Robertson.
Wow.
Let's see. And then other people that are like in Canadian government. So
Yeah.
apparently this has been around for, well, 40th anniversary. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And actually right now, our friend Jolene on her YouTube channel, they are going to be doing, I don't know what the date is, so I'm not sure if this podcast will come out before or after that, but they're actually going to be doing a book discussion about this book on her YouTube
Cool.
channel. So
Nice.
anyway, now there's that one, right, which I've
Yep.
started, but then, I'm a mood reader, and
You are.
I got another book from from a publicist, and it's Garden Inventories, Reflections on Land, Place, and Belonging by Mariam Pirbhai, I think is her name. And here's what it says, because this is the kind of book I love.
Yeah.
Nonfiction. It says, in Garden Inventories, Pirbhai brings her scholar's eye, her love of story, and an irrepressible sense of humor to bear on the questions of how we interact with the land around us, from what it means to create a garden through the haze of nostalgia, to the way tradition and nature are bound up in cultural ideals such as cottage country or even the great Canadian wilderness. And this just sounds fabulous. So I'm
Yeah,
kind
it
of
does.
torn between both of those, but they are definitely, it will be one of those two that I will really dig into.
They both sound great.
Hmm.
Excellent.
So, do you want to go first and talk about what you've read that you want
Sure.
to share?
Sure. Okay. So the first book I'm going to
Oh,
bring. Oh,
can I
yes.
interrupt a minute? And I want to
Yeah.
ask you a question. You know
Yeah.
what I noticed about you?
Oh no. What?
I was looking at Storygraph,
Yeah.
and I noticed that you read a lot of books that you never post on Instagram or talk about on the podcast. I was a little shocked by how many books you've read that I have never heard you talk about. Like, I didn't even know you read them this year. So is that a conscious thing, or how do you, I mean, it's not a
Oh,
criticism. It's just, I was like,
yeah.
you have read some great books this year that
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like you haven't talked about. Yeah.
I don't think it's conscious. I think it's most of them I think get posted on Instagram, although some do slide because I don't when I'm working during the week, I don't
Hmm.
feel like I can't take pictures. I don't have the time to take the pictures and just
Yeah.
don't have the energy to post. So like usually Monday to Thursday or Monday to Wednesday are kind of inactive zones for me on
Oh.
Instagram. And so then it kind of is do I if I whether or not I remember which books I've read, but the time the following weekend comes around to
Hmm.
post. And and sometimes it might just be maybe I don't have anything really interesting or new to add to the conversation. Is
Hmm.
that because I know I did read last month I read the latest book by Lisa Jewell,
Hmm.
which was the first Lisa Jewell book I've ever read, and I read it for my book club.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It was a really good thriller, but I had nothing new to say about it. And I'm like, Lisa Jewell really doesn't need me to help her sell books. So
Yeah.
I just didn't even bother post it because I'm like,
Okay.
someone else will post it and do a better job. And I'm like, I'd rather focus my energy on a book that I would rather focus my energy on.
Okay, but I will say this for your listeners, the people who really love your recommendations, I would highly recommend that they check you out on Storygraph, because I'm telling you, you had some great books, I thought, on there that I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have no idea like what you thought of it." I mean, I could see how many stars you gave it, that
Yeah.
type of thing, right? But anyway, so my whole point of bringing this up is to say, if you're interested, if you really like the recommendations that Tara makes, check out her Storygraph, because there are quite a few books there, at least for this year, that she did not talk about, but you may enjoy them if you like the recommendations she makes. So I just wanted to say that.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I try to read I don't even try, I just do read a lot
You
of,
just do, yeah.
varied different genres and stuff like that, so
And you find authors and books that I just think I don't necessarily like see them in the bookstore. Like they don't jump out at me a lot of some of these titles
yeah.
that you're finding, and that's why I love your recommendations. And so anyway, I am going to be checking out your story graph myself for some other titles because I was really surprised when I saw some things and I was like, "Damn, I didn't know she read that."
Now I'm really curious what I didn't post. Now I have to go back and compare my story graph to my Instagram.
Well, you might have to, like, after the holidays when your
Mhm.
job slows down, you'll have to spend some time doing that. But
Yeah,
seriously, because I look to see, and you've already this year, I think you had read 100 books already this year,
yeah,
and I was like, "Damn, like, that is like, I had no idea you read that many." And then I
yeah.
thought, "I don't think she's been listing all these," and that's when I looked it up and went, "Son of a bitch, look at that. She hasn't." And so,
Sneaky.
anyway, I don't mean to I am belaboring the point, and I don't mean to.
No, it's
I'm saying
fine.
it for a positive reason, which is
Yeah,
that everybody can go and get even more recommendations from Tara. Because again, your star system will be there, so we'll know if you
yeah,
really enjoyed
and
it
I
or
do
not.
try to write a little something too if I can,
Mhm.
but I don't always get around to it, but I do try to write a little couple sentences about each book too.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll shut up now.
okay. Well, on that note, actually, I am going to bring a book that I don't and an author that is not widely known in Canada, but I fully believe should be.
Mm.
And it's an older book. It's from 2007. It is from one of my favorite authors, and you can hear an interview that we did with her in episode 144, and that is Stephanie Domet. And
Mhm.
the book is Homing by Stephanie Domet. So this was, like I said, in 2007. She wrote another one of my favorite books, which is called Fallsy, Downsies. I love her writing so much. So I'm just going to give a little synopsis of Homing. So Leah is a young woman, I'd say late 20s, early 30s, living in Halifax, but she is haunted by what she's done, what she hasn't done, and also by the ghost of her brother. And her brother's ghost happens to reside outside the public library in downtown Halifax. And she is now, with what's going on, she is afraid to step outside of her home. So she is able to work from home, but she can't go outside of her home. She misses her brother and she communicates with him through the use of two homing pigeons, Sandy and Harold.
Oh
This
my
is oh no,
gosh.
it's a
Oh.
beautiful short novel, like I think it's around 200 pages, and it's just a beautiful story. It's sad, it's also happy, it's funny. Stephanie, as we know from the interview, has an amazing sense of humor, and it comes through in her writing. Her characters are brilliant. So, in addition to Leah and her brother, there's also the musician who lives next door to her, Leah's best friend, who comes and brings stuff to her because she knows that Leah, in her grief about her brother's death, can't leave the house. And Domet writes the stories of these characters. They're almost like separate stories that eventually they intersect. And when they intersect, it's just beautiful. Like, I can't tell you how much I loved this book.
Oh,
It took
wow.
me far too long to read it because I read her other book, her second book, Fallsy Downsies, several years ago. Loved it. I've reread that book and I knew she had this earlier book, and I think I put it off because I was like, what if I don't love it as much as I love this other book?
Yeah.
So, but finally, eventually I did. I purchased it. It's going to be difficult to get, I think, through regular bookstores. Independent bookstore, I'm sure, would be able to order it in for you. The publisher for her books are Invisible Publishing. So you can go onto their website and order from them directly. Okay, what's your first book?
I really couldn't remember, it's been so long ago, I couldn't remember if I talked about this, but even if I did, too bad I'm talking about it again. No, I really don't think I did, but it's
I want
called
it again. Don't worry.
yeah. Well, this is a book that you and I think it was again, the publicist reached out to us, and I read this book. It's called Cravings, and it is by Garnett, Kilberg, Cohen, and it is a collection of short stories. And I'm just going to read a little blurb that I wrote on Instagram, but I have here Cravings is a breathtaking collection of stories in which the characters exhibit a powerful desire for something: a father's love, a grander life, closure, time, friendship. I don't remember ever reading a short story collection that I loved as much from the opening story to the finale. Cohen has mined the very gems that define the intricate stories of our lives. Hope, disappointment, longing, failure, love, and acceptance resonate throughout this collection. And let me tell you, I have never loved any short story collection as much as I love this one. Like, I already
Wow.
know that I'm going to reread this one again. And I'm not somebody who goes back and rereads books, but I, every single story, I finished it and just went, wow, like I loved each story. And I did get a chance to go, just oddly enough, I found out that an independent bookstore called Literati in Ann Arbor, Michigan, she was going to be there to speak. She lives in the Chicago area, and one of her good friends lives here in Michigan. And so they were at the bookstore, and she read from the book and she answered questions and everything. And she has agreed to be on the podcast. So at some point, hopefully in January, maybe or so, we'll have her on the podcast. And I'm really excited. But I highly recommend this book. I just eat, and it's so funny. The thing about short stories that I really love is, okay, this is kind of weird, but this is what I love about them. Sometimes I read one and then I think, I want a full freaking novel about this. Like,
Mhm.
I want a whole novel. And then I say to myself, but that's the beauty of this story, is that it leaves me wanting more, but that it makes such an impression. And I love that about short stories, when they can grab you that way.
Yeah.
But each one of her short stories, I wanted a full novel about the characters and the storyline and everything. So anyway, absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. Please check it out. And it also has, if you go to my Instagram, it has one of the most compelling covers. Like, the cover art on this, I would love this on a poster. I'm not kidding. I love this book so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my first book.
That's a great one. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I worry that I've oversold it. So I hope that when you read it, that you enjoy it.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I'm not worrying about you overselling a book to me. I worry about others depending on the source, but I'm not worried about you, and that's so
Okay.
don't worry. Yeah, no,
All
no.
right. Thank you.
No
Okay.
fear.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, I'm gonna bring a memoir next, and it is "If You Lie Down in a Field, She Will Find You There" by Colleen Brown. Again, I'm gonna say the same thing as you. I'm not sure if I've brought this one before. Can't remember, but
No, because I can't wait to hear what you have to say
oh,
about
okay.
it.
So this is I really enjoyed this one, obviously, but it is very unusual memoir in terms of structure. So it's not just like a straight line narrative. It uses very poetic language, and it's interspersed, like, with her writing is interspersed with memories from her family members. I think there are also like pictures. Yeah, there were definitely pictures, even articles from a newspaper.
Mm.
Because the whole story, I should say that too, is that her mother, when she was not very old, when she was a young child, was murdered. And through both in this memoir, what she is doing is she, through her own memories and the memories of family members, she builds a picture of her mother, not as a murder victim, which what happens to people, unfortunately, right through the media, is
Yeah.
that you just then become a murder victim and that's it. So she is able to, and I think this is what her goal was, to build a picture of her mother as a person and as a mother. So something not just a murder victim, beyond that murder victim. Because unfortunately, she lost her at a young age and didn't get to know her.
Yeah.
And often that was the predominant picture, was that she was a murder victim. So it's a beautiful, unusual memoir that I really enjoyed. And I'm even going to share one sentence. Like I said, the language was beautiful, but this one sentence really stuck out to me. And I think uh, is something that we can all relate to. So, the landscapes of our childhood remain inside, and forever determine what is beautiful. And I just thought that's so cool
That
because
is
it's
really
true. Because whatever you think of as beautiful, like the surroundings
mhm,
that you're raised in, is kind of
mhm.
what you, as an adult, you continue to find beautiful. Even if you can find other stuff beautiful, there is, it's your childhood that really is formative in that sense.
So that is
Yeah.
so true and so beautiful.
Yeah. So it's a great memoir. Now, I don't want anyone to think because of the way I've described it that you're going to get the story of her mother's murder, because you are not.
Mhm.
That's not the point of the memoir. So just heads up, if you're looking for true crime, that's not what you're going to get here.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful one.
It sounds really beautiful, and
Yeah.
I wanna read that one, so thank you for that review because I was curious about that one,
Yeah.
so
No, I think you would really enjoy it.
mhm. Okay, so for me, this has been the last few months have been a Richard Wagamese
Mm.
celebration. So, obviously, he passed away in 2017, I think it was, I think, and so his books are older, right? But I wanted to mention the first one, which was Keeper and Me, which was his first novel,
Oh, I didn't
and
realize it was his first novel.
yeah,
Huh.
and I loved this book. So I'm gonna actually read just a little bit about the description, but it says so Garnet Raven is the main character, and it says when Garnet Raven was 3 years old, he was taken from his home on an Ojibwe Indian reserve and placed in a series of foster homes. Having reached his mid-teens, he escapes at the first available opportunity, only to find himself cast adrift on the streets of the big city. And so basically, he then connects with his family and he meets this elder named Keeper, and he and Keeper both have a need for community and a way to learn how to be in community because Keeper had alcoholism in his past, and he was trying to make his way back into community as well. And it is just this beautiful story of these 2 men, and the chapters they are let me rephrase that. There aren't chapters, I think it's like 4 sections, and when Keeper speaks, it's italicized. And so it's just him giving his take on Garnet, and then it's just the story of these 2 men trying to find their way, and it is just
Mm.
absolutely beautiful. It is poetic, it was a wonderful read. It blows me away that that was his first novel because talk about a storyteller, good lord. And it's a tragedy that he passed so young. I think he was like 61,
Mhm.
and it's just like, we lost something. I mean, he had I don't know how many books, maybe 10 or 12 or 15 books total or something, but still, here's a voice I really wish we could continue to hear, and I don't so that's my point too, and I'm not sure how many people will go back and read this, and, now I'm starting to feel like I've already talked about this book. Have I already talked about this book?
I
I feel
don't
like
know.
now I have.
It's
Okay, I can't
okay. Keep
remember.
going.
Okay, well, anyway, so what I would say is if you have not read Richard Wagamese, read him. Indian Horse is often the one people start with, but I would say I've read 3 so far, and all 3 of them have just been absolutely brilliant and loved them. So, I don't think it matters which one you start with, because I think a lot of times with writers that have been around for a while, people don't necessarily go back and read the beginning books. They
Mhm.
more stick to the later ones. But I wanna just say Keeper and Me, absolutely loved it, highly recommend it, and, it's just poetic. It's just that his writing is just so beautiful, and these characters, you will fall in love with them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my second
Nope,
one.
that's a great one, and I just looked it up. Yeah, he passed in 2017, and I think it says something for his writing that the literary world continues to mourn that he is no longer with us. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's been what, 7 years, almost 7 years, right? It was March 2017, and people it still keeps coming up that they miss his writing, so
And you know what's interesting? One of his best friends is Sheila Rogers.
no.
Yeah, and I just thought, in one of the books, I don't remember which one, whenever they have where they thank everybody, the acknowledgments and
Mhm.
stuff, and he just talks about how important she was in his life, and I just think to
Yeah.
myself, we did lose. I mean, obviously, the people who loved him the most miss him the most. But I mean, we all really are missing something because I'm definitely going to go back and read everything he's written. I cannot wait to read each one of them because anyway,
Yep.
I don't remember another author whose writing has just really affected me as much. I'll be honest, I don't usually read a lot of one author.
Hmm.
I'll read one that's really good and I love that. And then I just sort of move on. But with him, I already know I'm going to read everything he's written. I
Yeah.
just love him so much.
Well, even the fact that you've read 3 of his books in a fairly short period of time
Yeah.
is a lot for you. Like, I don't think you've done anything like that since I've known you.
No, but see, that was part of my goal. Remember how I said I have 1 year to read books that I purchased and
Oh,
I
yes.
bought I bought I bought his 2 of his books at the same time so that I was like, I gotta read these books, but now I'm just blown away and I think what a
Yep.
gift it was for me to have both at the same time and to read them so close together, but
Yep. Very cool. Okay, book number 3 for me. I'm bringing the newest book by another favorite author of mine, Michael Crummey, so Newfoundland author, and the book is The Adversary. Wow. So don't, if you're looking for like an uplifting book, don't pick this book up.
Okay.
But I loved it. I love his writing anyways because he transports me to Newfoundland, and I
Aw.
realized too as he does this, like this is set probably like 200 years ago. I love that he does not actually give you a date,
Mm.
but you know from what's going on that it's 200 years ago. And yet what he wrote is relevant to right now
Ooh.
in terms of like power dynamics and rich, powerful people and how terrible they can be. I don't want to spoil anything, but so this is a great book set back, let's say 200 years ago. Newfoundland had a mercantile system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Rebecca.
Well, not necessarily in Canada, but I mean, it happened in
Yeah,
the
like
US.
it's happened also in Newfoundland it would have been so in these little outport villages that solely relied on fishing because you couldn't grow really very much at all except potatoes and turnips in Newfoundland. The fishermen essentially worked for the merchant, and the merchant controlled the price that the fishermen got for their fish, and in return also controlled how much everything cost because the fisherman got money from the merchant for the fish, but then the money went back to the merchant to pay for supplies to get them through the winter, like their food, fish nets, anything that they would need. So, it was a very lopsided system that really only benefited the merchant.
Mhm.
And in The Adversary, you have a brother and sister. So, Abe Strap, the brother, he's horrible. There's nothing redeeming about him whatsoever. He's just a horrible person. And then you have his sister, who's only referred to the widow Keynes. You don't get her first name at all. Keynes is her married name, and they have now they are adversaries in that they are both merchants fighting against each other to control more on
Wow.
the coast of Newfoundland that they are. I can't remember if it's the south coast. I can't remember which area of Newfoundland they're in. And it's just them being horrible. You get their backstories as children. Again, nothing redeeming about Abe. You really want to like the widow. Because you get some of her backstory that you're like, you want to like her. And in fact, also that she's a woman who is in this power position is impressive too, but she just keeps doing stuff that you can't like her. You
Wow.
can't. Yeah. But the way that they manipulate the people of the village and how it reflects on the political environment that we find ourselves in at the time is really quite impressive that he's done this. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but it's a good book, but there's nothing happy in it.
Okay, so is this a new book you said?
Yes, so I think it came out just in September, October.
Okay, what do you wanna bet? You never know
Yep.
because of you never know what the theme will be, but what do you think? Could it make
Oh,
the Canada Reads list? Because this totally sounds like a Canada Reads book. What do you think?
it could, it could. It's interesting. Well, I would love to see him make the Canada Reads. I think he's been on the Canada Reads list before for his earlier book, one of
Mhm.
his earlier books. I think it would be a very divisive book because I think you either
Ooh.
like it or you don't like it. I can't remember. Someone I follow on Instagram had also read it, and we have common tastes in books. And
Mhm.
she did not like this book because
Ooh.
it was too dark. It was too much, too negative. And I can't remember. She described it perfectly, and I wish I could remember how she described it because I'm like, yes, as a person who loved that book, I'm like, that is the perfect description of it. But yet I liked it. She didn't.
Ooh. I would read this one. This totally
Oh, yeah.
sounds like something I would really, really like.
Oh, you'll hate them both. They're
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
not the
yeah.
book, but the characters. Yeah.
Yeah, because we had the same thing because if you look at the history of the United States, and especially when I lived in California, the, they had the whole thing with all the gold rush people. They the ones who were trying to pan or mine for gold, the people who ran the mercantile store, all those, they're the ones that made a boatload of money,
Yes.
and it was the people going up there trying to make a fortune that weren't making a fortune. But boy, let me tell you, they call in Sacramento, it's the Big Four, and it's these 4 obviously white men who just made a boatload of money and blah, blah, blah. So I would love this book, I
Yeah.
think.
Yep. I think so too.
It would allow me to hate them, so that would be
Oh,
great.
yes, and because it's always fun to hate characters sometime, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah, not because they're
absolutely.
poorly written, but because they're so perfectly
Yes.
written as hateable characters. It's
Yes.
just
We need characters like that because
yeah.
in the US, we have real live characters like that. So
Yes.
I would like to read some fictional
Yeah,
ones for a change.
totally, totally.
Anyway. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay, your turn.
So my next one is again another Richard Wagamese book because I kind of read them back to back. And I actually read this for a book club that I was in. And then I just have to laugh. My laptop died and I had to get a new one. And it was just a big nightmare mess. And I couldn't get online. It was just so embarrassing. Like I couldn't anyway, whatever. I'm not a moron when it comes to technology, but with a brand new system and I
Oh,
logged
yeah.
on too late, it was like a cluster F.
Yeah.
And so I ended up not participating. So I read the book without being able to discuss it. So let me just say this. It was Medicine Walk.
Mm.
And this one is about Franklin Starlight, who I believe is 16 years old. And he has never had his father really in his life. His father kind of came and went and often was under the influence of alcohol and just was somebody he could never count on. But he is living with this man. And I think gosh, now I can't remember. I think in the book, he just refers to him as the old man. You never have a name of the person, but he's living with this person his whole life. His mother died when he was younger. And his father all of a sudden shows up and says, I want you or actually sends him a message and then he goes to see his father and he says, I want you to take me up to this certain place and leave me there to die because he's obviously has like liver failure. He's in really bad shape. He is barely hanging on by his fingernails. And one of the things I loved about this story is it almost felt like I was reading like an old Western. It's kind of weird. Like Franklin or Frank, the main character, the boy, he, it just felt like because he rides to see his father on a horse, and so it just
Mm.
felt like very old style, like the Old West or something, which of course is offensive in the terms of these are, indigenous people
Yeah.
that we're talking about, characters, and that's what was weird. It was like a weird mix of it felt like this old classic Western,
Huh.
but it's modern day, so but you don't ever get a sense that it's modern day. That's what's kind of fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no hint of, like, certainly technology or anything. There's just no hint of anything. So it had this, like, old feel to it, but then you sorta knew it was modern. So I don't know. It transported me to a really magical space while I was reading it, and that's how it felt. It just felt like this fable or fantasy or something, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
just gave me the most amazing feeling while I was reading it. And I know you'd read it, but you said it a long time ago, right?
Yes, it was several years ago.
Yeah.
And I did not have that experience with it, but I find that fascinating that this is how it made you feel. Like this is the sense you got from it. Very
Yeah,
cool.
and it was, and so, I will say that and I wrote a really personal post, and I'm not gonna say anything because it's really it was a really, really, really emotional read for me, so if
Mhm.
you want to know why, you can certainly check in, on my Instagram account, but I loved this book, and it was the right book for me to read at this time. It kind of informed some of what I've been going through this year and my own personal experience, and so even though my family, we are not indigenous. These indigenous characters are speak to everybody, right? This
Yeah.
isn't just that story, although it is a critically important story in terms of, colonialism and the way that people live and his father and how he tried to live his life and his mother. I mean, it's really a tragedy, but it's a really beautiful story overall. Now, the thing I'm really, really excited about is I did not know this, but the last novel he published, or was published, I think, after he passed, is called Starlight, and it is about Frank as an adult.
Oh, I did not know that either.
I know, I didn't think you did because, to be honest
Oh,
with you, I didn't either because I never really, and then I started looking at all of his books, and when I read that, I went, "Are you kidding me?" And it's about Frank as a young man,
yeah.
an adult who a young woman, I think a woman with a child or something, comes to his property, and I guess he takes her in or something, and it's that story, and I was like, "Oh my
Oh,
gosh." So I love that he wasn't finished with Franklin, right?
yeah.
I love that he wasn't, and I get to read that book,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to do more research to read about his books and his stories and how he came to write them. And one of the last things I want to say about this is, in those 3 books that I've read, each one of them, the editions that I had a puzzle piece missing on the cover. The 3 books I have all have a puzzle piece missing.
Hmm.
And I think that is fascinating because
Yeah.
that's purposeful. So I kinda said, I think in something I wrote, I said, "It makes me wonder if did Richard Wagamese find the missing piece to the puzzle he needed when he wrote that story."
Hmm.
So, yeah. So
Very
I'm gonna
cool.
do a little research on that too because I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. That's very cool. Great books, great books. And thank you for that. Now I have to go pick up Starlight soon.
Me too, I can't wait to
Yeah.
read that one.
Okay, I'm coming back with a another nonfiction, another memoir. So this
Wow.
one, I know this. I've read some great nonfiction this year. I really
Yeah.
have. So this one, I think I've mentioned it. I don't care. Anyways, it is 15,000 Pieces, a
Yeah.
medical examiner's journey through disaster by Gina Leola Woolsey. So I think I brought this one to our nonfiction November
Oh, okay.
episode. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's what I did. So this another fascinating book, and this is the author's first book. I think she met Dr. John Butt in real life, like they now both live on the West Coast, and he told her
Ooh.
told her his story. So
Wow.
Dr. John Butt was the medical examiner for Nova Scotia when the Swiss Air Flight 111 went down in September 1998, just off the coast of Halifax. So through this book, she tells the story of his experience as a medical examiner during this tragedy, along with his life story from the time that he is a child up until he how he became a medical examiner and what brought him to Halifax, to Nova Scotia. It is fascinating. Both stories are fascinating. But what I loved too is that during the Swiss Air Flight 111 tragedy, he became known for the compassion that he showed the victims' families because all 229 people on board the flight were killed. And during the investigation and the recovery, he became known in the media just as the one who showed true compassion for these families as they themselves were working through it. When everyone else was kind of like trying to just do the investigation, he is the one that made connections with the families.
Wow.
And I found in this story, because he is also a closeted gay man, that comes, I'm not spoiling anything here. So he's got a complicated backstory and life story himself. And so she treats his life with the same compassion with which Dr. John Butt treated the family members of the victims. And
Wow.
it's a brilliant book, a fascinating life story. And yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, because I have a copy of that one as well, and I am looking forward to reading it.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the trauma of what he experiences in his
Hmm.
profession,
Yeah.
and then, like you say, he's closeted, but I assume that he starts to come out or is
Hmm.
able to come out. I mean, is the ending like, do we get a hopeful sense that he'll be okay at the end, kind of, or should you not talk about the end yet?
Yeah, no, no, I can talk. Yeah, I can talk without telling you to. No, it is hopeful because I think he
Good.
was raised. He's from originally Alberta, and he was raised. Oh, I can't remember when he was born, but it would have been in like the 40s, 50s that he was really his most formative years,
Mhm.
when you kept stuff in. And if you
Yeah.
were like, a real man, everything was kept inside and you didn't let it out. So that one led to be him being a closeted gay man, because he couldn't be a gay man. He ended
Mhm.
up being married and having a family, but it was not a good relationship. And also because of that, then when he started doing his training and practice as a medical examiner, you see some horrible stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you just he would keep that inside as well. And he would have mental breakdowns
Mm.
that were like PTSD. And so
Yeah.
he would, after a while, knew the signs and was able to get help for them. So yeah, like, no, it's a great story. There's rough moments, the whole point, but it's watching him go through this and with his family. It's, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that one too, because I am looking forward to reading that one.
Heads up, there are some graphic details when it comes to perhaps autopsies and such stuff.
Mhm.
So if you don't like that, there are a few, not a lot, but there are a few things, but you can easily skim the paragraph and you're not going to miss anything of the story.
My next one is actually just a three-part series, but it's, March, by John Lewis, and it is a graphic novel series of 3 books about the march during the civil rights from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama for, civil rights, but most importantly, the right for Black Americans to vote, because we have done a really poor job historically making sure that people, even though they had the right to vote, we didn't. I mean, we had so many things that other rules we set up to maybe ensure that Black Americans couldn't vote. So this has been out for a while. In fact, the first book in the series came out in 2013, which I didn't realize. If you had asked me like how long ago did it come out, I would have been like, oh, like 5 years ago. But it's been 10. And I've always wanted to read it and I just hadn't. And it's really an absolutely brilliant award-winning series. And it won the National Book Award. It won the Printz Award, which is one for nonfiction for young adults, and also I think it won the Coretta Scott King Award, one of the Coretta Scott King Awards as well. But it was, I mean, I cried reading this thing because if we do not, I'm sure Canada's the same way, but if we do not in the United States start teaching the truth about our history, that will be the greatest shame for the rest of our however long this planet exists and this country exists, because I learned things at my age that I did not know, and while that was happening, the civil rights, I was still pretty young when all of that was kind of happening, there's no excuse for that. Like, these are things I should have known.
Yeah.
And it's shocking to me to be this. It's kind of like when you said you were reading some things about American history and you were
Mm-hmm.
saying to Mike, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. It's really terrible to be this age and to be reading something for the first time and understanding it, you know?
Yeah. And I'm going to say, in a little like bookish serendipity, this is going to come all right. I'm so glad you mentioned it. So the I take my coffee black. I'm going to circle it back to that because Rebecca, when you talk about the vote, he mentioned he did a little snippet about. Obviously, we all know that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and that is essentially all I really knew. I didn't know about the repercussions of
Mm-hmm.
it. So prior to him being assassinated, again, we also probably knew this, there was the Emancipation Act, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Lincoln and his government were looking for ways to, I don't know if retribute, not reimburse, but
Oh,
to,
reparations.
reparations. Thank you, for the freed slaves. And so they had spoke to like Black members of the community and said, what can we do? And they were like, well, we would love some land. That would be great. And they were like, done. You're right. You should have land. So they had in the South taken off, I can't remember the amount, but took a huge portion, like parcels of land, and were going to give it to the newly freed slaves. Then Lincoln was assassinated. And through after his assassination, Tyler Merritt refers to Andrew Jackson as Andrew Jackass Jackson, then became president.
Mm-hmm.
He reversed it. So all the white landowners who were going to lose their land, like the land was going to be taken from them and given to the slaves. He said, no, that's not going to happen. You can keep your land, but the Black people can work on the land for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you're no longer slaves, but you can work on the land that is owned by the white people, and you have to give them like 25% of whatever, or maybe it was actually more than that. I think it was more than that because they end up getting like being left with 25% of what they make from the land.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things. So, and there's other things about voting too. But yeah, that was one of the things I'm like, where I know about the assassination, but I didn't know about the ripple effect that followed.
And I'm going to assume that was the 40 acres and a mule. That was the phrase, right? They were
Yes.
supposed to get 40 acres and a mule.
Yes.
I didn't know they didn't get it.
No.
See, I assumed they got it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying is I don't understand. You know, is the history shameful? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. It is horribly shameful. And the point is, if you call it what it is, you tell the truth and you call it what it is, the obvious thing would be, well, then let's never do that again.
Yeah.
And every time
Yeah.
I hear people say, oh, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. We freaking repeat it all the time.
Yeah. Because we don't know it.
Exactly, because we don't tell the truth about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, and I just have to say, I just saw, and I think you can see it on Amazon Prime or something, but I went to see it on the big screen here locally. I got to see a documentary called I think it was the Lakota Nation versus the United States. And I learned so much in that. And I looked at my mom and I said, when we were walking out, I said, did you learn anything here that you didn't know? And she's like, oh my God, yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's my mom's 87. It's like, and it's not like we have tons and tons of things teaching us this, because yes, you can read things here or there, but at the end of the day, we should be learning these things without hiding them or
Yeah.
pretending they never happened, which is of course what's happening here now. But yeah, so yeah, I can't wait to read that book you're talking about,
Yeah.
because I am really curious about some of the other things he talks about. And yeah, so what I would say is, if you're listening and you're from the US, please read March if you haven't read it, because like I said, I was reading it in tears, because these people simply wanted their right to vote, which they already had, but they were being denied their right to vote. And then they were beaten. And the white racists that beat them and killed some of them, it's just I don't even, and many of them were law enforcement, to be honest.
Yeah.
So and governors and everything else that, said this will not happen here, and, desegregation and stuff. But anyway, so I would say if you're in the US and you haven't read March, please read it. It's absolutely beautiful, 3-volume set. And if you're Canadian and you're interested, definitely pick it up. It's like I said, award-winning, brilliant series.
Sounds great. Okay, I'm doing a whole pivot here for my last book. I am bringing A Gathering of Shadows, which is book 2 in a series by V.E. Schwab. It's book 2 in the, I think it's called, no, it's a magic series, and now I can't remember the name of the series. But anyways, it's A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. Fantasy, there's royalty, there's parallel Londons, so there's magic, and there's a red London, a gray London, which is like our London, where magic does not exist, no longer exists, a white London, a black London, all with varying degrees of magic and great characters. Oh, I just love this. It's like the fantasy series kind of series that I love. So if you're looking for a fantasy series, I'm just going to throw this one out there for you. Like, it's a great one.
I think that sounds fabulous.
Yeah, super fun.
And it reminds me of, what was the Never something by Neil Gaiman, because
Oh,
that was set in
Neverwhere? Is
London.
it
Yeah,
Neverwhere?
Neverwhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of that maybe.
Yeah. Yes, it is a little bit because not everyone can you can't travel between
Hmm.
the different Londons, but some people can with a little bit of magic, and they go back and forth, and there's like, oh, in the second book that I just finished, there's a magical competition. Oh, there's some pirates, like there's just a little bit of everything, a little bit of romance, a little bit of queer romance, some family. Oh, yeah, it's just, and really well written as well.
So how many books are in the series? Do you know?
3.
3. And this is book number
This
2?
was book 2, and this is an older series too. I think it was published originally in 2017.
Okay.
So heads up, the second book that I finished does end in a cliffhanger. So,
Ooh.
but you can easily get book 3, which I don't have because I didn't realize I've been reading. There was a long space between the first book and the second book for me when I read them, because the first book didn't end in a cliffhanger. It just, the book ended, but this book 2 is like a continuation of the characters' stories 6 months later. But book 2, definite cliffhanger, and I'm like, I now have to get book 3 like as soon as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay. Well, my last book, I think there should be like a drum roll, or like a big fireworks display
Oh,
or
I know
something.
what this is. Yep.
Promised Land by Barack Obama.
Woo woo.
I finally finished it. And it's so funny. I went for Thanksgiving, our Thanksgiving at the end of November. We drove to New Jersey and back, and I said, oh, I'm just going to listen to it in the car. There's no way. The way the traffic was, it was crazy, and the weather and stuff. So I ended up listening to it at home while I was putting jigsaw puzzles together. And that was perfect because I was
Yeah.
able to listen to it and do something at the same time. Anyway, yes, I really enjoyed it. It's 700 pages of Barack's life and, being president up to the point where Osama bin Laden is killed. And that's kind of where it ends. And I know he's got another, I don't know. I was thinking to myself, is it going to be 2 more, or just, I can't imagine that it's going to just be 1 more, because in this book, he's not even completed the first 4 years of his
Yeah.
presidency. So I thought, oh my God, I think there's going to be 2 more.
We can do it, Rebecca. We can
I
do
think we
it.
can. I think we can. Yeah. But here's what I just want to say really briefly about him, which was funny. I think because we've had a dumpster fire of a situation in the US for, after he left office. And it's funny to me that we will lionize him. He will be on a pedestal that no other president in my lifetime will ever hit, because he was so fabulous and his family was fabulous. There were no scandals. The whole family is so brilliant. We love them all. But interestingly, after I finished it, I said to myself, the thing is, he has that power, right?
Yeah.
He's like a male with power. He's not a white male. He's a black male, but he has that power. And he has that confidence and that swagger that you have to have if you
Mm-hmm.
are going to be a decision maker at that level. And I am reminded that some of the decisions he made then are reverberating now, because there are things happening in our world situation now that he contributed to. And so I was able to look at him, which I appreciate, with a more critical view than I expected to. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to
Mm-hmm.
look at him and say, he didn't do everything right. He didn't. Now, granted, he also had the Republicans working against him in a way that was unconscionable.
Yeah.
They literally said, we do not want him to be successful, and it's because he's a black man, right?
Yeah.
And that's just disgusting, because it should be about what's right for the American people, not how much you don't like this black man being a president, but whatever.
Yeah.
But still, I look at him and I think, I know that we're going to put him on a pedestal. Same thing like with Jimmy Carter. Carter made some real big, mistakes, but, I think after the presidency, he was such an amazing person, human being, well, before and after. So anyway, I guess my inarticulate point is that it's interesting to read about living people, to remember their mistakes and to keep them human and not
Mm-hmm.
put them on a pedestal to the point that it's unrealistic to have them, you know what I'm trying to say? You know what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I read it. I would never have read it if it weren't for you. So thank you for that. And I think you're right. We will get through probably another 2.
I'm ready. I'm almost ready for book 2,
Yeah.
but I'm okay that it's taking him a while to write it.
Yeah, I am too, because I
Yeah.
just finished this one.
Well,
But yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I do look forward to it. This is probably our longest podcast, but we had a lot to talk about since it's been a while. So
Yes.
I think this was good. Hopefully you got some great recommendations out of it. And do you want to talk a little bit? Do you want to mention some of the things we have upcoming soon? Because there's a big announcement that just came out.
Yes. So we are very excited that Canada Reads is going to announce their long list on, I believe, the 13th, right? So just in a couple of days from our recording.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do a little impromptu podcast episode about our thoughts on the long list. We have a upcoming towards the end of the year, like our year in review and best of books.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else I'm missing? You have an Adam Schultz interview, which should be coming out shortly.
That will be coming out shortly. Yeah, when my old laptop died, we're having a little bit of difficulty kind of transitioning some things, but we're gonna have a lot. The point
Yeah.
is, by the end of this year, you're gonna have a lot to listen to, which we think is a good thing. And then, yeah, Canada Reads will kick in.
Yeah. Super exciting. Okay, until next time, happy reading.